Elon Musk and Nigel Farage, people who are becoming quite good friends under the basking light of Donald Trump.
Is the reason you hope he's going to give you money, is that why you don't want to criticise him?
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
And yet within 24 hours, we've got Musk talking about invading the United Kingdom. So in this video, I'm going to be dissecting the interview that has literally cost Nigel Farage 100 million.
Things turned from gold into
So I'm going to break this car crash of an interview down into three parts. First, we're going to look at what he says about Brexit and critique Laura Kuenssberg's lack of a response to that. Then we're going to talk about Tommy Robinson and how that's caused Nigel Farage to lose 100 million and the support of Twitter. But then we're going to look at the craziness that seems to be coming out of Elon Musk.
Some of the people here we've spoken to this afternoon, though, seem to be coming to you because they're very angry. They're very angry about the state of the country. Do you think that's what it's about?
As they should be. They're also angry economically. We are getting poorer. The worst case scenario, economically, is better than where we are today. You know, if you look at the last 8 quarters, GDP per capita is falling in 6 of them. And it coincides with a period of record net legal migration. Mass immigration not only makes it tough for young people to get a house, not only makes it very difficult to see a GP, not only makes our roads and infrastructure struggle to cope, it's making us poorer.
Well, they should be, because these are the promises made in the build-up to the Brexit referendum.
You will benefit from better care provided by our NHS thanks to the reallocation of funds from the EU budget. Your weekly food shop will become cheaper. Food prices will no longer be inflated by agricultural policies controlled by the EU. With less pressure on housing, younger generations will also find it easier to get on the housing ladder. A more prosperous and safer future awaits us outside the EU. A vote to leave is a vote for a brighter future for you, your family, and your community.
And does Kuenssberg bring any of that up? All those promises made, and he's just ranted about how they've not been fulfilled, even though that was the whole point of Brexit? No. She completely ignores that issue and skips over it. And I think in part because she really wants to narrow him down on what Musk has been saying about the British Prime Minister.
And I think the anger isn't directed at the Labour or Conservative parties. I think people increasingly regard them as a uni party. So you're right, they're coming to us because they're angry, but they're not coming to us to stick 2 fingers up to the establishment. They're coming to us because they think we've got the courage to do what's necessary to turn this around.
So they don't. In fact, their policies in general for the Reform Party fix nothing other than maintaining the status quo for the rich. Their policies do nothing to fix the birth rate, for example, which has steadily been dropping. It was at 1.57 in 2022, but as of 2024, the fertility rate dropped to 1.47. That means you need people coming in to replace the fact that we're not having as many children, and they're not addressing that. None of Reform's policies actually fix the inequality gap, which continues to grow. And with that, that means that you're going to continue to see poverty growing and a shrinking middle class. Their policies don't fix that. And should we really be surprised when the party and its leadership are predominantly made up of millionaires? They don't have a clue as to what's going on down the ground. Because the damage of Brexit and inequality aren't affecting millionaires. And I'll give you an example from someone who voted Remain. Have a listen to this.
I don't think there is any evidence that we have been seriously damaged in the way that many people who were supporting the Remain campaign predicted.
And I see Farage and his group thinking along the same lines. It's not Brexit, it's the way it's been implemented, even though their entire advertising campaign was vote Brexit, everything's solved. It's funny as well because after Jeremy Hunt, pictured here, did that interview on LBC, this article came out by The Independent stating the amount of damage that Brexit's created. 30 billion in the divorce bill, 27 billion drop in EU goods exports, 2.8 billion annual food export losses, 118,000 tonnes of lost seafood export. And remember,
And the acid test of Brexit that the voters will face in 2020 is, have we got back our territorial waters? Are we like Norway, Iceland, the Faroese? Are we in control? And my suspicion...
Fishing.
Absolutely.
So the acid test for Brexit is fishing?
I think it is, and I tell you why. It's going to take some considerable courage to say to our European partners, I'm very sorry. I know you've had a fabulous time catching 80% of our fish, but we're actually going to take back what is rightfully ours. That's going to take real leadership and real courage.
And considering this article came out just before, the day before, the interview with Kunsberg, when Farage brought that up, why wasn't this brought up?
You say you've done it with nothing. You have had a very useful thing, the support and the oxygen of the support from someone who's on his way back to the White House, and Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who just happens to also own one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. Now, you mentioned there people's anger over the grooming scandal, as it's known, and it is well understood now that there were failings over many, many years. There's no question about that. Everybody understands that that has taken place, and nobody would excuse what has happened for a second. However, your political friend, Elon Musk, has made pretty outlandish claims about exactly what happened there. And he wrote online that the Prime Minister was complicit in the rape of Britain. Is it acceptable for the world's richest man, with a friend on his way back to the White House, to spread those kinds of misleading and what many people would think are pretty offensive claims online?
Well, you either believe in free speech or you don't.
Does Nigel believe in free speech? This was from 12 years ago in an interview with Nigel Farage versus James O'Brien. And boy, does he not talk about freedom of speech. He talks about the type of speech he wants to hear.
You've mentioned your discomfort at listening to foreign languages on a train recently.
I made the point that I got on a train and went for several stops, and there were a lot of people around me and no one spoke English. And I thought, this is... I didn't say I didn't object to it. I felt slightly uncomfortable. And I think, actually, isn't that the problem? Isn't this, of all the countries in Europe, the most accepting, the most tolerant?
You said, I don't feel very comfortable in that situation. You did say you had a problem.
I didn't feel comfortable, no.
Yes. Your wife is a German speaker.
Well, my children are too, yeah.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
No, because they can speak English, and the whole point about
How do you know those people couldn't?
Well, maybe they could, but I got the distinct feeling that it certainly wasn't their language of choice. And if you look at the primary school situation in the East End of London, where you've now got schools where a majority don't speak English, doesn't that say to us? Doesn't that say to us that what we want is a sensible, balanced immigration policy, where we want people with skills to come into Britain, but we also want integration in society.
Of course we do. And the schools you refer to, the pupils you refer to, are registered and recorded as having English as a second language. They're not registered and recorded as not being able to speak English. That's precisely that sort of...
And some of both.
Well, yes, but no one's counted them, so your own children would fit into that category.
Well, hopefully, lots of people can speak different languages, but the point I'm making is, do we want to live in an integrated society?
No, forgive me. The point you're making is that schools in the East End are full of children who can't speak English. I just want you to recognise that's not true, what you just said.
Come from
the
homes.
Children who are typified as speaking English as a second language would include your own daughters. Their mother tongue being German.
They come from homes where English is most definitely not the first language, and in too many cases is not the language at all. Now look,
but no one's counted how many people are in the second category.
And it would be a very helpful and useful thing if they did, and perhaps we'd be even more surprised and even more shocked. But the argument
or perhaps we'd realise that most bilingual children in this country are children like yours.
Well,
Elon Musk seems to be very busy making these kinds of very, very provocative claims about British politicians. He said Keir Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain. He said that Jess Phillips, who's a government minister who's worked her whole career helping victims of abuse, he said that she was a rape genocide apologist. This afternoon.
That's an expression I am never going to forget, because he actually looks shocked and he cuts from his face away back to Kunsberg. So we don't know how he readjusts himself, but I assume he's a bit freaked out by what Musk is saying, and it's putting him in a very awkward position, because as a nationalist, shouldn't he be backing British people over Musk?
The fact that Musk supports me and supports reform doesn't mean, as two grown-ups, we have to agree with everything the other said.
Now, he makes that statement, but is not being specific as to what he disagrees with Musk, and this is going to come back and haunt him in about 3 hours' time.
The truth about that came out over a period of many years. But is it...
Drip feed, drip feed, drip feed. No big, full national public inquiry.
Except there was, and it cost 200 million, but the 20 recommendations in this report haven't been implemented. He's once again saying stuff without any context or research or reading. He's just yabbering off. And he did the exact same thing with the riots, where he started making spurious accusations, which then incited further hate online. And as I stated earlier, none of the stuff that he's talking about actually solves any of Britain's problems. If he got into power, he wouldn't fix anything because he doesn't have the policies to do that. I've pointed out too, you'll never hear him talk about them. All you'll ever hear from Nigel is him ranting on about immigration being the cause of all of our woes. I've just pointed out the birth rate. I've also got to point out to you that 500,000 a year are leaving the UK. You will have an economic collapse if you brought immigration down to a few thousand, which is exactly what Nigel wants to do.
But would you tell Elon Musk that he is wrong? So I know you've distanced yourself from his comments about Tommy Robinson.
Do you know what? Real friends, when they meet face to face, have conversations, and they agree to agree, and sometimes they agree to disagree. And that is what open society and free speech is all about.
But that's not what Musk is all about. What Musk wants is Tommy Robinson to be freed, and it wouldn't surprise me if he wants him in power. Bear in mind, only a week ago, Musk was talking about how he liked the far-right political party, the AfD.
But have you or anyone in your team said to Elon Musk that his calls for Tommy Robinson to be released from prison, a convicted offender, somebody on the far right who you yourself worked very hard to distance yourself from, have you told him that he's wrong about that?
I think you're missing the point. The point is the fact that he supports me politically and supports reform doesn't mean I have to agree with every single statement he makes on X. And I think you're getting bogged down in this. You know, I will, at the inauguration, have a conversation with him on a variety of things. This will no doubt be one of them. But I think the media are getting too hung up on this. Frankly, what he says about other people, what his views on electric vehicles are, or whatever it may be, isn't relevant.
Musk wants Farage to back Tommy Robinson. And if he doesn't, he's going to lose the support of Twitter and that 100 million that's been kicking around. And isn't it funny how when Nigel doesn't want to talk about the topic of Elon Musk, he avoids it. But when there's rumour kicking around that Elon Musk is going to give 100 million, it's all Nigel wants to talk about.
But I suppose what I'm asking you about is whether you, and I know you're somebody who cares about politicians' safety, for example, you and I have discussed that before. Yeah. You've been the target of abuse yourself on many occasions. It's a straightforward question. Do you think it's acceptable for a government minister to be accused of being a rape genocide supporter, being called pure evil, and by the elected Prime Minister of this country to be accused of being complicit in rape?
These are very, very tough terms. If you believe they're insightful, if you do believe they're insightful, then they go beyond the line.
But do you think they've gone beyond the line?
In public life, tough things get said. They get said by both sides of the debate. You're right, this man happens to be the richest man in the world. But equally, the fact that he's bought Twitter now actually gives us a place where we can have a proper, open debate about many things.
He must be kicking himself after this interview, because the stuff you're going to see at the end from Musk is absolutely mad, and it's totally attacking Nigel. But it's not a free speech platform. Musk has been continually banning people from going and saying negative stuff about Musk. He has suspended accounts that are negative to him. That is not free speech, and it's on a private platform. It's not in this virtual town square. It's all controlled by Musk. But then, just to really add into that, if you actually see what he's actually talking about, it's all about him. When you log into Twitter now, the first 3 to 6 posts are all about Musk. It's not a town square, it's his own personal microphone. And that's also probably part of the reason why Musk's stock share in Twitter has dropped 71%.
How would you describe your, some people call it a bromance, with Trump and Musk?
I made a decision in 2016 to put my head over the parapet to support Trump. I have stuck with him through thick and thin. At times it's not been easy. Maybe at times I was the only public figure in Britain that would stand up for him.
But in that whole interview, he's not stood up for the British Prime Minister. Now on top of that, isn't it wild when you start to see this list of people who've been sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. Accusations, allegations, written statements, court documents, and even a court case. But when it comes to those women being assaulted, Nigel's completely quiet and complicit. But when it's the grooming gangs that coincidentally happen to be Muslim, Nigel's all over it, along with Tommy Robinson. So you've got to ask yourself the question, does Nigel and Tommy really care about those women? Or is it their own personal grift and a particular group they don't like? But of course it doesn't end there. I've got more to show you. Musk had relationships with several women at SpaceX and pestered them. Do they bring that up? No, of course not. Trump's ties to Epstein? No, you've just got to believe Trump's words. Prince Andrew and Epstein? No, you've got to believe Prince Andrew. But as soon as it's anything to do with Labour and Keir Starmer, you've got to cast doubt on it. You've got to question it and you've got to attack it. The hypocrisy here and the people that they defend, who happen to be millionaires, says a lot.
And is his friend, Elon Musk, now your friend, and is he going to give you millions of pounds?
Well, that's a real question, isn't it? Now, forget about the $100 million being talked about in the newspapers.
Are you going to give you money?
That is for the birds.
Is he going to give you money?
He may well do. He may well do. But it's got to be legal. He's got to be comfortable with it. He may well give us money. Whether he does or not, I'll tell you what he gives us. With huge numbers of young people, he makes us look cool.
Is the reason you hope he's going to give you money, is that why you don't want to criticise him?
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
And from that, there was the end of the friendship, because Farage didn't fully back Tommy Robinson. Elon Musk comes out and states the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. And on top of that, Nigel Farage tried to defend that, even though only a few hours later he was saying he was going to get some money. Musk then doubles down and starts talking about Rupert Lowe as a potential replacement for Nigel Farage. But if you think it couldn't get any wilder, this morning, Elon Musk runs a poll asking whether or not America should invade Britain to get rid of its government, and at that point, 72% agreed. I've seen and read about some wild stuff in politics. I don't think I've ever seen someone do a 15-minute interview that literally blew up in their face £100 million and potentially the world's biggest megaphone. It's just unreal to be watching this. But also, when you start to unpack everything that Nigel's talking about, it's a complete grift. He's saying one thing and then allowing others, and complaining about it, and then allowing others to go off and do similar actions and not saying a single word of criticism about it. Even in that interview, when he was somewhat distancing Tommy Robinson, he was very careful in the language he was using to make sure he didn't do anything to damage his relationship with Musk, and yet he still did. And some of the stuff that he said was just pure gold.
Is he going to give you money?
He may well do. He may well do. But it's got to be legal. He's got to be comfortable with it. He may well give us money. Whether he does or not, I'll tell you what he gives us. With huge numbers of young people, he makes us look cool. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this video, and I assume you did by getting this far, hit that like and subscribe button. Once again, thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters. You keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to become one, click the link in the description. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.